I want to tell you quickly who I am. I am 50 years old, been married 25 years. I have 4 grown kids who all walk with the Lord. I have been a local pastor for 21 years, and I also run multiple businesses, and I just do a lot of things. And so I only talk to young Christian fathers. You know, young Christian husbands and fathers are facing quite a bit, and I know some things about that because I've been one, and I talk to a lot of them. And so this is one thing I can do. I can sling ammo into the back of your truck. That's my goal. All right, so today I know that one of the things that you're facing is knowing how to, proactively engage your kids so that they know something about who the Lord is, and you can train them up in instruction from an early age, and there's an art to that, and it's not the sort of thing that we come to naturally, and it's not the sort of thing where you get a pamphlet that's delivered to you in the mail, and now suddenly I know how to express and convey the heart of God the Father to my kids. That would be rad if you just got some sort of pamphlet or playbook that landed in your mailbox every year with, all right, this year we're going to focus on X, Y, or Z. That would be fantastic. We don't get that. So I just want to talk for a couple of minutes and give some actual practical examples of things you can be doing, okay? So you need to know this, that fathers and fatherhood, that was God's idea. That was his conception. And it was actually God who first called himself Father. And we see it actually in Deuteronomy chapter 32, where in the Song of Moses, he says this in verse 6, "Is not he your father who created you and who made you and established you?" So God as Father, that's his idea. And so in some sense, and this is not meant to freak you out, but in some sense, you are the earliest evidence of God in a child's life. A big part of how they conceive of God, his nature, and how safe he is to approach, and how you approach him, and his intentions toward them, is a result of you. Now that's humbling, and it's not supposed to make you start dripping beads of sweat down your forehead like, oh my gosh, and now I'm in trepidation and I've failed, I've screwed up my, none of that stuff. It is just helpful for us to be thinking about, how am I doing that? So one of the ways you've probably done right off the bat is you named them. That is a distinctly fatherly thing to do. You imparted an identity when you gave a name. That's a big deal. It was such a big deal that I remember whenever I would first meet one of my children who is, getting cleaned up in a delivery room, I always wanted to be the first voice that they heard. So I would go to them immediately and I would greet them by first name and say, "I'm your father and I love you." And by pronouncing their name, I'm doing a fatherly kind of act, right? Okay, so here are some physical ways. I thought I'd just give you a few physical ways that you can impart something of God's goodness and his nature to your kids. Okay, one is with boys, we would do this thing where we would crack foreheads. I know that sounds crazy, but whenever we would crack foreheads, I would say gonk. So we would make this noise, gonk, and I'm talking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old kid. He would love that, and we'd both rub our heads and it was intense. It kind of hurt a little bit, but little boys love that kind of thing. And rough play and wrestling and that sort of stuff, it is absolutely instructional for them that my father is powerful, and kind, and he's not safe, right? He could choke me out. He could end me at any minute. And there's something of God in that. And C.S. Lewis talked about that with Aslan, right? He is good, but he is not safe. So being powerful and formidable is good, and having a kind heart is good. But they need to be able to sense that and feel that. And that's a gift to them in some way. With daughters, it was a little different. We would sort of roughhouse a little bit, but definitely not to the same degree as with the boys. For them, it was about emotional safety. And I remember one of my daughters had a hard time with just her emotions were just bonkers. The slightest thing would set her off, and then she was just beside herself and like out of her mind with her emotional outburst. And I remember one time, really just in prayer, felt like the Lord kind of helped me understand that she needed containment. And so when she would start flailing and having an absolute fit, I would just go wrap her up and just absolutely restrain her. And man, she would just scream her bloody head off, and it was insane. And she would flail, and sometimes for 8 minutes or 13 minutes until she was exhausted. And the entire time, I was just there saying, I love you. It's okay. And that would even make her more outraged. But essentially, she would kind of get to the end of her physical burst and then just sort of go limp and relax. And that was a gift to her too, to let her know you can act out however you want to. And one, it doesn't change me. And two, you don't win. And three, there are things that you cannot overcome and will contain you, and you are powerless to be able to defeat. And that is a gift to a young woman, to understand I have perimeters that I can't escape. So that was one. There was another time where I could tell she just had so much emotional sort of build up, and she didn't know. I could see her struggling for how to express and words, whatever. And I told her, I said, look, anytime you have that, and instead of scratching somebody or biting somebody or hitting somebody, come over and just grab my hand and squeeze and put all of your pressure and all of that rage, just squeeze onto my hands as hard as you can for as long as you want to. And she giggled and was like, okay. And sure enough, 2 days later, some event happened, and she ran in and she grabbed my hand and she just squeezed as hard as her little, whatever, 5-year-old self could squeeze. And what that was communicating to her was, Dad can take it. My emotions aren't too much for him. I can't hurt him. He's a safe place for me to offload all of this emotion. And in a way, that's a training ground for her as well, to know that is also how God is to you. You can go and express everything you need to him, and it's going to be fine. So the physical, real emphasized with the boys, the emotional and containment, and really seeing daughters, that's really important. And then, of course, just like saying to them, hey, you look beautiful in those shoes. That's a great dress. You look so pretty. I love it when you do that, when you put the barrettes in your hair. That's great. Never call your son's buddy or your daughter's princess. Those kinds of things actually create problems for you when they hit teenage years. You are your son's father. You're not his buddy. He will have lots of buddies in his life. He has one father. And so you can occasionally use the word buddy, but that's rare. I would encourage you to use the word son. Just keep calling him son. Son, have a seat. Son, let's go. Okay, and princess, daughters who grow up thinking they're a princess become a problem. I promise. So the last thing physically is spanking. And I know that, boy, that's a hot topic. And I remember being in grad school and none of our friends spanked any kids and they thought we were weirdos. And man, I am 100% on board with spanking. physically taking a spoon, popping a butt, letting them know, even with the tears and the screaming and all of that stuff, it's big, it's important, it's biblical. I can point to all kinds of passages that talk about that. You know, foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction drives it far from him. That is a gift. You are gifting your child when you spank them. And you can come into an agreement with what the scriptures say is an ancient and true and trusted pathway, or you can think you've outsmarted the whole thing here at this late date of 2026, like we've all cracked a code and got so much wiser. If you're not spanking your little kids, I sure would start.